to the Efed podcast, the podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real. Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Efed podcast, episode 76. So excited you could join us today. I'm Mikey Unlikely, host of the show. With me, as always, my co-host, producer, Brian. How we doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself, sir?
I'm doing great. Excited to bring it to you. In the middle of writing e-wrestling, we're in the middle of doing e-wrestling. Excited to bring it you the audio of e-wrestling.
It's e-wrestling Sunday, apparently.
E-wrestling Sunday. I like it. But guys, today we're joined on the show for the interview by Slamzy. He's the handler behind Azzy Vebbins. You may know him on Twitter as That's Azzy Vebbins. A fun follow and a big advocate of efeder.net. We're going to dive into their story and talk about some of the fun feds in the process.
.net.
If you haven't heard about eFeder, it is a social media just for e-wrestling. Check it out, efeder.net. We're not associated in any way, but I want to give a shout out to those guys. Also on the show today, in the Spotlight segment, we've got Redemption Wrestling. They're an Angle Fed, and we're excited to tell you about them. We've got a special place here on the eFed podcast for Angle Feds.
100%.
So we're going to talk about Redemption and tell you a little bit about them and see if maybe they're a good fit for you and what you're looking for in e-wrestling. We got a new question of the week. Who's your favorite character e-wrestler and why? You can't pick any of your own, so you got to pick another character in e-wrestling. Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh,
who's your favorite character in e-wrestling?
Man, I'd have to. I don't know, Mikey Unlikely. It's always been a fun read from the when I first entered Defiance with the SEG stuff back in the day, Sports Entertainment Guild, all the way to current with quite the long run as a Fist of Defiance.
Quite the long run. And as you hear this, the run has unfortunately come to an end. A very fitting end, Brian, at 499 days. Ooh. The heel lost the one day before number 500.
Almost there.
Beautiful. It was a great story. Really enjoyed it. Now your new Fist of Defiance champion, Gage Blackwood.
Gage.
What do you think?
Oh, man, it should be a great run. I've been trying. Me and Roland have been battling each other in staff chat for the better part of a year now about which one of us should take the Fist. He was dead set that I should, and being the fat head, I was dead set that I should not. And Roland is a hell of a handler. He's a workhorse. His quality is crazy. He's worked Gage 3-4 years now, and
4 years. Yeah, he's been in Defiance forever as this character. Yeah. He's built up to this point, and after a lengthy run as the secondary champion, comes right off of it, and with a strong arc, the Defiance versus 24K arc, Defiance goes over strong in the end, dominates.
You love to see it, Christy.
You do. You love to see it. Good fitting end to the story, and so now my favorite in-character e-wrestler, I'm going to give a shout out to some of my classic wrestling guys over at classic-wrestling.com. I'm loving the new characters over there. All Business, Alex Bruder, one of Kevin's characters. Kevin's back, first time e-wrestling since FWO, and doing well.
Very nice. That's the Flying Frenchie, right?
Flying Frenchie previously, that's correct. And so he's over there, classic. And we've also got JSN, Johnny St. Nelson, the preacher character over at classicwrestling.com. It's good stuff. Wild Thing, Freddie Kilgore, our buddy Joe, he's going to get fired for sure.
For sure.
There's some great gimmicks over there, and I'm absolutely loving the atmosphere.
Where's that over at?
Over at classic-wrestling.com. Check out the website, folks. It's absolutely beautiful. Shout out to Solex.
Great website.
All right, guys, we're going to get into the show. We're going to hear your answers for the question of the week. We're going to hear about Redemption Wrestling, and we're going to talk to Slamzy. I'm excited to bring it to you, but first, here's a word from our sponsors.
The Efed podcast is a totally free podcast that drops each and every single week for your e-wrestling ears on a multitude of apps. If you'd like to support the show, however, the best way to do so is over at patreon.com/Efed podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support both Brian and myself as we crank out more e-wrestling content with perks such as early releases and special Discord designations. And if that's not enough EW action for you, jump up to the $10 a month tier and you can get a free EWT's t-shirt design, early and ad-free editions of the show, as well as access to our monthly Q&As, bad graps, and more. And if you'd like to be a sponsor on the show and get your ad played, the best way to do that is the sponsor level on Patreon, with all of the previous perks, plus weekly commercials on the show. Check it out over at patreon.com/Efed podcast. We greatly appreciate your consideration.
Occupy Pro Wrestling, putting the smart back into smart mark since 2012, with a community on Discord and message boards, merchandise, a weekly vodcast on Twitch, and much more. Check out everything from us and our site partners at OccupyProWrestling.com.
Efed Tees, the #1 source for Efed merchandise, offering custom merchandise made for your wrestler, tag team, stable, or Efed. Whether you want a high-quality t-shirt, face mask, hoodie, hat, it doesn't matter. We can help you out over at EfedTees.com. Do you have a custom logo for your wrestler? Awesome. We're going to slap it on a shirt and help you out real fast. If not, no problem at all. We have a custom design service too. You can work with a graphic artist to get the perfect design made for your character. Go on over to EWTees.com and click on Want a Shirt to get your shirt started. EfedTees.com.
Defiance, an angle fed boasting 8 years of continuous fantasy wrestling. Defiance offers opportunities for original characters, micros, a standalone website utilizing Backstage 3 script, and a forum hosted on the long-running FWrestling.com, as well as a roster full of some of the most experienced writers in the game. Come see for yourself at DefianceWrestling.com. That's DefianceWrestling.com.
All right, it's time for the question of the week here on the Efed podcast. Of course, we post that question of the week over on Twitter at the Efed podcast each and every week. It's pinned to the top of the profile, so you can answer it there in the comments. This week on Twitter, Brian, we got 2 answers.
Oh,
everybody likes to talk about their character, maybe not their other people's characters on Twitter.
no one wants to put anyone else over.
Well, here we go with the couple who did. Brian, I'll read the names and you can hit us with the comments and then we'll switch off. Up first on Twitter machine is at Hope Lissy. It's Lissy Hope.
Howard Black. I identify so much with the character, a Midwestern kid who had a son before he was ready. The struggle of balancing what he loves versus obligations.
Nice.
She also says, Wade Moore / Leviathan. That's Moor. I'm assuming that's Moore or Moore. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
Wade did the Wyatt / Fiend story better than Wyatt / Fiend.
That's not going to be hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a cool character nonetheless.
100%. And also Bonnie Blue, a genuine inspiration.
Good deal. We also got on Twitter machine at Laughs in Ho, Annika Swan.
I have to agree. Wade Moore / Leviathan. He's the first person out of a group of people that I've worked with for almost 20 years that I even considered working with and regret not doing it. Annie's still got Mega. She sticks to her story that she didn't steal Leviathan's dog, accompanied with
a photo
of looks like one of those rabbit terriers with a very mean mask on.
Yes,
like a muzzle, but with teeth.
Yeah, a muzzle mask. Yeah, nasty mask. You like to see it. Over on the Discord side of things, of course, you can also hop into the Discord from that Twitter over in the profile. On Discord, we got plenty of answers.
Coming up first, season 3 coming soon. That's Meg. Damn it.
She drops the F-bomb. This one's going to be tough. Luciana Verdoza of 5BW. I've seen this character evolve over the last 2 seasons From being the mean girl to a damned evil villain. I liked everything that this character and what they were able to do.
Very nice.
Also from Meg, Amy Harrison, shout out to Dave, from 5BW and the UTA fame. Like Luciana, evolution was the one thing, but over the years, Amy made herself to be a pure babyface. I don't know if Dave will turn her heel, but her face run is doing fantastic.
Nice. And speaking of 5VW and their second season, you can now over at EWTs.com pick up their I Survived Season 2. And all I got was this lousy shirt.
Dave hit us with that business. You can check out that new 5BW wrestling shirt fresh off the press over at EWTs.com.
Up next, we've got Ravage.
Rich Gatsby, former Alpha Unified World Heavyweight Champion. After our recent feud, the characters have come to an understanding and respect. Ravage made Gat the man he is today, and too bad Alex took his manhood away. Uh-oh.
Oh.
You hate to see that, Brian.
You do. You hate to see when two sentences rhyme. Up next, speaking of sentences and books, the Shadow Pope.
What? Hell of a transition, Brian.
I'm a segue man, if nothing else.
The Shadow Pope, it's Pete. Joey Melton, the very first CSWA world champion. He's been handled more times than Rick Dickulous's mom. But when his creator, Stephen Thomas, ran him, he was literally Chris Jericho and could effortlessly, wow, we drink, folks, win any match with any combination of seriousness and humor and lose literally zero credibility.
My biggest question out of that is it Rick Dickulous's mom who's getting handled, or is Rick Dickulous handling a lot of moms?
Well, that's what he wants you to think.
Oh.
I think Pete's implying that maybe the opposite scenario is true.
Maybe Rick's just projecting.
Oh, that's a whole different episode. We need to get Rick back on the phone. We'll do it another time. Moving on.
Welcome back to the TEFP therapy sessions
with Dr. Mikey.
All right, up next is Kevin R.
Ultraviolet from FWO and the CWL, a hilarious character who, like all great baby faces, was a moron. Rose the ranks from cruiserweight to heavyweight, found love, and hosted a cooking show that had better continuity than many professional fictional worlds. Always a face, always beloved, and always deserved to be.
You love to see it.
That's an old school shout out for Ultraviolet.
You love to see a good cooking show.
Well, hey, if you bring the continuity to your character, I don't care what you do.
Pretty much.
It's great.
So up next is MDG, Modern Day Gladiators. It's Warren.
Hey, Warren. Of course, you can get Modern Day Gladiators over at drivethrurpg.com. Warren says since the others are putting multiples, Warren is one to ramble. In the CSWA, the Wolf, Mike Randalls. You want to know why? Listen to my episode of the Efed podcast. Check out Warren's episode.
Oh, nice plug, Warren.
FWOs. Oh, God, Brian.
I'm glad you got this one.
Rumna Darren Raw.
Sure.
Because I want to hear Mikey pronounce it. We got the switch right on that one, just for him. Rumna Darren Raw. I'm going to go with that one.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
Of course, in Defiance, it's Stalker. Because Justin is just as batty as they come. That Stalker interview is coming soon at the Patreon for Efed Podcast.
Patreon exclusive.
You can check that out at Efed Podcast. No, that's not right. You can check it out at patreon.com /Efed Podcast.
It's delayed on that one.
Also, from High Octane Wrestling, Bobby Dean, because he made me root for him against that Mike character.
Ooh.
Like, actually root for him.
You love to see it.
Bobby Dean, of course, debuting this week over at classic-wrestling.com. You love to see it.
Ooh, .com.
But overall, it's Eli Flair because he's one of the easiest characters for me to write, even if Pete changes the dialogue. Oh, and hashtag buy Pete's book.
Pete wrote a book?
He did write a book. You can check it out on Amazon. One Chance, Legend of Valerian's Garden.
This is the first time hearing of this. Up next, it's Rossi Orton.
Rossi Orton. In PIW, it was LLB, of course, the famous attorney. Over in Action Wrestling, it was Jeff Garvin, Keith Scott Zimmerman, and Chris Fear. Not the Action Wrestling that's going on today, but a previous action.
Roland's Action, I believe.
Roland's Action. In GCW, it was Vivica J. Valentine. I think that's Billy, isn't it?
He definitely has a character that's double V's. I don't remember if that's it or not. I think it's. I think so. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Billy?
No, Billy was affiliated with GCW.
Billy, when you get out of the field, you let us know. The Asylum is up next, and he wants you to know it's Borst.
Borst.
I've heard that's a dish best served cold.
I've heard it both
And
ways.
finally, from the FWO, it's Flying Frenchie. Ooh, Kevin from above. Jonathan Conspiracy and the Boston Strangler.
There you go. I don't know any of those names except the Flying Frenchie, and I only know that from this podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's another entry, but it skipped a page. Defiance, Lindsay Troy, Oscar Burns, and one Mr. Pat Cassidy, previously of Defiance.
Previously, like Ross, who didn't mention any of my characters or yours, he's fired.
Rossi fired.
Rossi fired. Up next, now that he's fired, up next, the mask guy.
That masked guy.
Oh, that mask guy.
You know, that one. AJ Knight, he's written perfectly as the kind of guy you want to strangle but can't help cheering for at the same time. Sounds like a good Kurt Angle.
There you go. Sounds like a plan. Up next is Bobo, Booby.
All of them. I love reading Cancer Giles, Doozer, Max, and Salter Kale, Mikey Unlikely, Lindsay Troy. I also enjoy reading the shows John Page puts out on SVO. But ultimately, my favorite guy to read is Mike Best. Been reading his shit since I was 14. I feel like I know the character better than my own at this point.
Well, that's a problem.
He's got his own little Mount Rushmore there. I like that, though.
Yeah, you like your names in it.
Well, absolutely. I'm in that Mount Rushmore, Brian. Well, I mean, I'm happy to be in it. And like he said, he knows Mike's Best character better than his own. I know Bobby Dean better than most, too. So it's a lot of fun.
There you go. We've been reading someone for so long, you're bound to know it pretty intimately.
That's right. Me and Bobby Dean are intimate. Okay.
Oh.
Cat Pasadena is up. Oh, Brian, that's your job.
Cat Pasadena's up next. And apparently, briefly, I was fired from this job, but Cat Pasadena's up next, and he's fired.
Fired. Resin is my favorite.
Yeah, great answer. Glad we fired you. No, I do like Resin. Ryan Strassman, he's great. Kerry Kuriyama, he's doing great with Resin. He's a great writer, in my opinion.
Absolutely. He's over at Classic Wrestling as well.
.com.
Handling the amazing Amarettos.
Oh.
Magician tag team.
Very nice. Well, speaking of people who should be fired, up next.
Fuzz.
If we have to, it's Fuzz.
Fuck other characters, only mine are special, and fuck the rest. Sean Borstein.
Which is his character?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah. See, you're fired. You didn't even answer the question right, Fuzz.
Broke the rules. You can't name your own character. Oh.
Jesus. Get
Fuzz,
it together,
come on
Fuzz.
Now. Get it together. Okay.
Up next, Love and Peace. That's good.
Jake. Santana Johnson and Robert Dean and Zach Fantana. Again, his own little Mount Rushmore, but he's missing a head.
Oh.
That's very Jake, though.
Well, the head he might be missing might be queued up by the next Highlander 4H. It's Ron Hall, McDon Hall, the impresario of the Lucha Mask Emporium.
Yes, Ron. His answer is Mikey Unlikely. So I made the list now twice. Happy to be here. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Hashtag blame Mikey.
Hashtag fire Mikey.
Keeping him moving because he's got quite the long list ahead of him. He's also got a new t-shirt up on EWTs.com, America's Most Hated. Go check it out. It's Brock.
Brock, over in PIW, his favorite was LLB as well. How do you get a wrestling lawyer over? Is he free to do in classic wrestling? That would be great.
Oh. LLB was rolling, right?
It is rolling. We're going to steal him.
I
The
object.
Asylum is up next.
I object.
Over at the Asylum, his favorite was William Endler. Really dark, really damaged, and really good character.
Nice.
In the FWO, his favorites were Kodiak Vic Creed and Ruben Ross. The boss? No, I'm kidding. The finalists from the FWO Survivor feuded over many years through every division in FWO. The Black Plague and Kodiak Vic Creed were amazing. In High Octane Wrestling, it's Max Cale.
Oh.
Long may he maim.
Well, there you go. Past guest on the Efed podcast.
That's right. Check it out in the archives. And that's going to wrap it up for this week's question of the week. Guys, thanks for answering. Of course, you can answer this week's question of the week for the next show over on the Twitter machine or on the Discord. Find the links at twitter.com/theefedpodcast.
Hey, this is George, the handler of Cool Cancer Giles. You're listening to the coolest podcast on the internet, the Efed podcast. Your host, Mikey, unlikely.
All right, it's time for the spotlight here on the Efed podcast. We're going to talk about a Fed that's out there and see if it's a good fit for you and what you're looking for in e-wrestling. And today, Brian, this one sounds pretty good to me. We're going to talk about Redemption Wrestling.
Oh. Redemption.
As we talked about at the top of the show today, they're an angle Fed. And reading through some of their stuff, I'm excited to talk about them. I think it's somewhat similar to how we operate over at Defiance. So let's get into it. Brian, I'll let you hit me with the questions and I'll explain a little bit to you.
Very good. Very good. Love a good angle Fed. So how does this Fed operate?
So the Fed, they have creative control for the handlers with less focus on competitiveness and more focus on teamwork and story and character building. Segment writing and match writing is volunteer only, but it is an angle Fed through and through.
Very nice. Very nice. The match writing being voluntary is foreign to me, but I like that core concept. How often, though, are they doing shows / pay-per-views?
So they do have weekly shows weekly shows every week of the year. Other than they have 8 specials and then 4 pay-per-views. So it is a weekly Fed.
Okay, wow. That's now I see why the match writing is voluntary.
Yes. Very involved. Yeah, you have to type up stuff pretty often, but no. It is a weekly angle Fed.
Very nice. So as far as rules, what are we looking for here? We're looking at here.
They're a laid-back Fed. The main thing is not to disrupt things backstage. Be cool, OOC, as they say. No plagiarism, and active enough to move forward stories. That makes perfect sense in an angle Fed. Not only that, to willingness to put people over when the time comes. Everyone knows sometimes a good story ends with you losing.
That is paramount. Sometimes it just has to happen. Sometimes you have to let Mikey Unlikely run you out of your own Fed.
It wasn't that hard to talk you into it.
So as far as active championships, what are we looking at?
They've got the World Championship, Brian, which is obviously the main championship.
Yep.
They've got the television title, which is your mid-card title. The Domian, which is tier Terry for short-term reward. And a tag team championship.
Oh.
They also have 3 championship belts for their showcase roster, which is NPC characters to make them more than jobbers when they get beat, which is the showcase title, the internet title, and the SC tag.
Very nice.
I like that they build up their jobbers so that when they get beat on an angle Fed, it's not just anything. It's kind of like what we do with Brayson. These guys are pretty much in line with what we do.
Yeah, that's a concept that in Defiance, at least, it came well before me. But yeah, I can see why they would utilize it. It's a great when you do need those NPCs, those jobbers, if you will. Like it they mean more than just making up some random one-off that you never see again.
Exactly. They've got a name, they've got a personality, they've got a history behind them. So
and sometimes those histories can turn into something, and sometimes I'm going to pick up one of those guys and run with them for a while. I don't know if that's allowed here, but the way they're set up, that certainly is an option.
Creativity options are everywhere. So as far as their top wrestlers, Brian, they've got Jason Sandman, Rosie Sin, Bale/Jinx, Casey Holiday, Arlie Kirk, the 2X, which is a tag team, Henhouse Slaughter, another tag team. That's a funny name.
Chickens.
Lucky Keenan/Drake, Draco Dragata, and others that are easily here depending on my mood. Everybody's your favorite at different times in an angle fed. It just depends on what story they're telling.
100%. It's all about once the competitiveness is taken out of the picture, it's all about the writing and the creativity.
It's great. Brian, you can of course find Redemption on Twitter at RedemptionLR.
Ooh.
And then over online at redemption30.proboards.com. A good angle fed, one you should check out. And Brian, I'm excited about them.
Proboards.com. Yeah, no, it sounds like a great fed. I want to check it out. Roster members, what are we looking at number wise here?
They got a healthy roster, Brian. They've got 22 handlers roughly, with 8 tag teams and 26 singles wrestlers.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty thorough.
Absolutely. I mean, on a weekly basis, that's pretty cool to have that many guys. And I'm sure what you're doing is going back and forth, so you're not booking, 20 matches a show.
Exactly. Yeah. Man, probably allows for, at least from the handler perspective, to be a little more bi-weekly if you choose.
Yep. So they've got some flexibility here as well. And then as far as other things that Redemption is going to give you, their roster has ultimate control, Brian. The staff puts together feud partners and determines the champions, their push, etc. But the handlers themselves determine the story, the feud route, match winners, and pushing more control and teamwork towards them. Staff is more or less just a facilitator and the middleman to get your stories over.
100%, like a good angle fed should be. Essentially, the inmates run the asylum.
Absolutely. I like what they're bringing to the table. I might check them out now that I'm taking a break from Defiance. Hey!
You're fired.
At redemption30.proboards.com and at RedemptionLR on Twitter.
Mikey didn't take a break. He's fired.
I've heard it both ways. All right, guys, check out Redemption. They're our eFed Spotlight Fed of the Week. All right, everybody, we're back for another edition of the eFed Podcast interview series. Today, I'm joined by Slamsy. You may know him from back in the day as Slamsley. He is the handler behind Azarine Vebens at That's Azzy Vebens on Twitter. He's currently handling in Action Wrestling, OWA, Mile High Wrestling, Uprising, NFW, Revolution 1 Wrestling, and more. Slamsy, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing great. Get to enjoy the Independence Day weekend, and
yes.
Plus, it's also really good that I'm able to finally be a part of this group. Is it episode 75 of the eFed podcast?
Episode 76 of the eFed podcast.
76, okay.
So yeah, excited to have you on. You've been a follower since the early days on Twitter. Really appreciate you always retweeting and putting our stuff out there. And then recently on eFeder, also. eFeder.net, if you haven't checked it out. Another social media app for just eFedding. So check it out.
Definitely good to have the balance there.
You don't have all of Twitter after you over on eFeder.
Yeah.
So Slamsy, let's talk about how you became a fan of wrestling. When did you first get into it, and what are your early memories?
Well, I have to say it's probably been a lifelong thing. I was born one day after the big event in Toronto on August 29th, 1986. So basically, I had like three different SummerSlams that happened on birthdays as growing up as a kid. So I've been a fan for pretty much my whole life.
Your parents were fans?
Yeah. And, second generation. My dad was a big fan. We were both fans of Macho Man Randy Savage.
Nice.
Obviously, especially with how pro wrestling is now, that it's sort of getting into another boom period with so many different types of independents, AEW, WWE, etc.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be a wrestling fan when it's hot, like it was in the 80s, like it was in the late 90s, like it has been in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's going to be an exciting time for wrestling now that people are getting back to it.
Exactly.
So you've been a wrestling fan the whole time, and talk about some of your favorite wrestlers along the way. You mentioned Macho Man. Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
I'd probably say Macho Man, Randy Savage, Mr. Pay-Per-View, Rob Van Dam.
Nice. Good selection.
Would be on there. I'd probably have to throw in Roddy Piper. And for the fourth face, I'd probably put Cody Rhodes for like a modern wrestler.
There you go. You got some good mix there. You got some talkers, you got some good wrestlers, you got some that are both.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I like when people pick obscure people. Like I like when you pick Rob Van Dam and Roddy Piper and Cody Rhodes. It's just people that everybody has a unique Mount Rushmore, so I like to explore the topic.
Oh, yeah.
Well, talk about how you found e-wrestling and what drew you in. How did you find this weird world that we live in now?
Well, I can't even remember how far back it was, just because I'm pretty sure the first character that I would have had, the message board's probably been deleted at this point, and it's been that way for a bunch of other different ones. As you know, when you've done it for so long, eventually just the different stuff just goes away.
What were you doing? Were you searching for wrestling stuff and stumbled upon it, or were you looking for e-wrestling, or what's the deal?
I think it was just that, I was a pro wrestling fan searching stuff online, and I like to do creative writing. Nice. The main reason why I do Twitter is for using it as a creative writing exercise. That's pretty much what the big draw sort of was.
Yeah. And so you found e-wrestling online, and I assume you found role-play feds?
That's kind of where I started out with first. Again, I've not won a whole bunch of championships with any of the different characters. But it just, still having fun with it along the way.
Of course, absolutely. You mentioned those feds early on. Obviously, they're gone. Feds fall by the wayside all the time throughout the years, especially back in the 90s. It was stop and start, stop and start. When you get into e-wrestling, talk about your first character that you made. Do you remember him or her?
Oh, yeah. My first character, oddly enough, it was sort of an amalgamation of Savage and Van Dam, because his name was ESG, El Sombrero Grande, Sanchino Fernasandro. And yeah, again, inspired by the 90s Savage with the cowboy hat type of look. And instead of doing the thumbs like Rob Van Dam, he would do like the hanged loose sign, but still pointing at himself.
Nice. There you go. And so the gimmick was just, hey, I'm creative writing a wrestler for the first time. I'm going to combine some of my favorite wrestlers and kind of try to make it one, like you said, amalgamation.
Yeah. And again, too, because I wasn't quite sure of having him be from a certain place and kind of the sort of where the whole genesis of the location of where the character would have been. I didn't have a specific place in mind, so I basically created this sort of far-flung island where basically all the characters that I've made have come from.
There you go. And, that's a good way to do it. It's something original.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just mentioning this because I have a feeling it's one of the Twitter questions, possibly, or one of the Discord questions. But the idea from it came, I was drinking Florida's natural orange juice one day. And at the time, they had it where the oranges were from both Florida and California. And so I thought, what would it be like if there was a Florifornia orange juice company?
Florifornia.
And from there, that's basically where the idea came from for the far-flung island in the Pacific. Just because I figured, it's a much bigger ocean, and there's islands popping up all the time because of volcanoes. So there's always a chance that there could be some wacky island like that there.
Awesome. That's clever, though. I like it. And you started from the beginning with that and rocked it all the way through now.
Even, if I've had some people detracting who were like, well, the only time I've ever heard of this is when you've said it, and when I Google search it, it's just, your character saying the name of it. And again, it's one of those things we're trying to keep the kayfabe part of the character.
Yeah, have you ever been to Parts Unknown?
North of devastating.
So
east of the Pacific Ocean, west of London, England, south of Mars, and north of Hell.
There you go. Somewhere in there.
Oh yeah.
Take a left.
Pretty much wherever Randy would have been in the United States, essentially.
So you create this character, you're role-playing for the first time. How bad were those role plays?
Again, it's one of those things that even today I tend to do it more extemporaneously as opposed to people who actually plot out the exact verbiage they're going to do with their promos. So it's just been kind of a mixed bag the whole way through. And, it's more just to entertain other people, I feel, at this point, than to really determine if it's going to win or lose.
So what you mentioned those feds that got shut down early on, you don't have recollection of what and where they were. What's the first big fed and run you remember?
I know, I can't remember where it was, but I remember there was one that was called First Hand Championship Wrestling, or FHCW. There is one that technically still is around. And that's the Excelsior Wrestling Society. Unfortunately, just because it's a few guys who are really talented writers, it's just that, they sort of keep to themselves. I don't think any of them have Twitter. And they just write their shows, every few months. And so, but that one still technically is still around. It's just not
like
there's just not as much activity on it.
Sure. And in those feds that you remember, the early ones, you said they were decent runs?
No, I'd say that they were pretty decent. All things considered.
And what were your big accomplishments at this time?
That's probably where it's been so long that I'm trying to actually remember the accomplishments that most of the other two characters that I had. Just because it got to the one point with the character right before I did Azarine that the company that had them, they had a specific vision for the character, and it was not necessarily the same one I did, but they basically almost had full control of the character, in as much that they figure out what the verbiage would be, and that he would be more of a Kurt Angle wrestling machine type of wrestler. As opposed to a goofy second generation grappler whose father just didn't think he would become world heavyweight champion.
Which is a story you were trying to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes that happens. It's unfortunate. Obviously, it's nice when some feds retain some creative control, that they can have some fun and do angles and things like that. But when you go too far outside that wheel box, it can really mess up what you're trying to tell.
Oh, yeah. And the weird thing, though, is now... Well, and admittedly, it was more of a joke type of character. Just because of the fact that... at the time, I was trying to have him have, as a finisher, a self-induced just one-handed choke slam, sort of like a senton onto the opponent. And they're like, well, there's no way anybody would,
Agree to lose to
that.
Yeah.
I just thought it would have been funny. And oddly enough, the company that actually has the character has recently turned the character heel for the first time and actually have him aligned with his father, who some people, I'm probably going to say probably a small amount of people would probably know of as Azarine's stepdad, the almighty Slam Miser, Slamuel Addergool McBody Sr., who essentially is Hollywood Hogan if he had the mentality from like 97, but the body now, and crippled by a steel chairs match until recently when medical science was able to infuse all the metal from the steel chairs into his legs so he could actually walk properly.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So they got him doing the heel shtick now, though.
Yeah, they've got him being a heel and actually being under the tutelage of the father instead of, like, trying to make his own name.
Well, what about after that? What comes next?
And the thing would have been that character. Then getting to the crux, or pretty much the character that I probably had the most success with, which would be Azarine. Started in October, I believe, 13th, 2015.
Okay.
So it's been almost 6 years with the character.
Yeah.
Started in Empire Wrestling, which is still around.
Nice.
Excuse me. And they're a well-run grappling group. It just, I was with so many different companies that I'm just like,
overloaded.
I have to try to, when trying to juggle all of them, try to figure out, well, which one am I, not feeling I'm going to put as much focus into. And that was basically one of them.
Seems like a common
It's
thread.
Also where Azarine met her first wife, the one-woman army, F.M. Young, who is a phenomenal writer and very successful competitor in Efeding. It just, through one way or another, there was a short period when I wasn't sure if I was actually going to be doing Efeding, and that relationship basically ended because of inactivity. And that's, again, through the course of the personal life of the character. Usually when she's not in a relationship, it's because the other handler, just due to inactivity on the other person's part.
Yeah. But you said you've had the most success with her. She's been around now for 6 years, and now you're in, I don't know, 5 or 6 different feds at least. What?
Yeah, at least it's a lot, and
someone's gonna have to be the Empire Wrestling again soon.
You never know. It's just the one that I do feel has kind of been the home front has definitely been Mile High Wrestling, or MHW.
Yes. Was a great
one
fan
where
in their first run.
Yeah, it's where she's definitely had her probably biggest success. And her biggest rivalries, I would say, would definitely be there.
Absolutely. So check out Mile High Wrestling if you're listening, because it was a great fed on the first run. And I know they recently just came back, so excited to see what happens with them. Check out Mile High Wrestling. If you give it a Google, I'm sure you'll come across it.
Oh, yeah. Especially, like, if you've been in any sort of Efed with a Shield Maiden character, basically this motorcycle biker gang of, again, talented writers, and I just will say, though, it does get difficult at times when you are booked in multiple matches against them, because at times it does feel, or especially in the first run that I had, it definitely felt like I was being ganged up on by each one. It's like I'd lose the first match, and then the second one would be like, well, you lost this match, so you're obviously going to lose to me. And it kept building from there. And they're very collaborative. It's one of the reasons, too, why if you go on Efed, there's a lot of people in their group that are affiliated with it. But yeah, just know you're definitely in for a challenge if you are facing anybody from that group, like Samantha Titanus Hamilton, who currently is in EWC. She's the only one, surprisingly, that did not rejoin Mile High Wrestling. And again, that would probably be for an interview for another time with that handler. It's just interesting to note that she was the one person that didn't come back. Or hasn't, because you never know.
Yeah, I mean, e-wrestling is... it's ongoing. As long as the Fed's open, there's always an opportunity for people to come back and make a big return. And maybe that's another good thing, because, you know, if everybody comes back at once, then you don't have that big return that can happen by itself. So, Mile High Wrestling, it's a role-play Fed or an angle Fed now?
That one is definitely a role-playing Fed. It's run by Robert Mack.
Yep.
And
bunch of good people over there, good handlers.
Yeah. Definitely do try our best with, you know, different stuff. And yeah, it's definitely a good place too if you're just getting your start, trying to just get your legs and try to develop a character. It's definitely a good place to start, I would say.
And now you've recently been handling in action wrestling too. How's that run been?
I'd say it's pretty good. Ironically enough, I joined action wrestling because of the fact that Mile High Wrestling during the first run shut down. Rob was like, you know, no matter what, forever, time infinitum, MHW's never come back. So, you know, we finished off with episode 30, which, because my character also deals a lot with Roman numerals, would routinely, and again, there's probably a bit of innuendo by always referring to the show as episode XXX, just because that'd be the Roman numeral for 30.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, we felt that it was a good place to end on, and I am enjoying the time in action wrestling. Again, it's one of those things where I do enjoy having the character in the cruiser class division, just because the way that I write, I'm not going to be one of those people that is going to write close to like 5,000 to 10,000 words. I am in groups that's the limit, but I just know there's no way, especially now with how my life has changed since, you know, the pandemic and everything else, that I'm probably going to be able to write that much in like less than a week.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
tough.
really a lot of times struggling just to get the 700 that I need for this one.
Understandably. I mean, sometimes you can be stretched too thin and it's tough. Sometimes creatively it's tough. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're writing in so many places, here's a question for you. How do you keep each storyline straight? How do you keep each promo fresh with the same character?
Well, again, I do feel it helps, you know, with the different holidays, because there's always something unique to go with for each day. Specifically, I use National Day Calendar. I usually Google the day and then National Day, or a website called Check-A-Day. Check-I-Day, I believe, .com. Just the only problem with that website is that some days, some of the celebrations might be slightly off by a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
So before I post like a tweet about it, I always make sure to check at least one or two other websites
To confirm.
to make sure it's an actual viable, like there are people actually celebrating this very off the wall holiday or celebration.
And that's one of the things that caught my eyes on Twitter with your profile is every day is a holiday, and every day you're posting a GIF to celebrate that holiday. And it's fun follow, and it's funny to see all the weird holidays that exist out there.
And I mean, my main reason for doing it, I know I get a lot of flack for it, and a lot of people are like, well, it's not really a personality to do it. But again, the point for me doing it is to provide, alternative ideas for other handlers for, when they're writing segments, when they're writing promos, if, they need like a little line or something being like, oh, I hate that it's, barbecue spare rib day. Why isn't it, this other one? Or, which coincidentally is another one for July 4th.
There you go. Rib burn off.
Yeah.
We need to find, never mind.
In case for those British handlers who are like, well, I'm wanting to be a babyface and I don't want to, say Trader Day. I could say that, or the fact that it's Caesar Salad Day on July 4th.
Have a July 4th party with just Caesar salad. It's great.
There's that too.
So,
but yeah, it's just that's the main reason why I did it, is that way it's to help, the community in general get different ideas, in case they see it, they can, react positively or negatively to it and go from there.
I think it's a good idea, and it's unique, and I don't see anybody else doing it on Twitter. So as far as I'm concerned, anything that's unique is interesting. And even if it's not great every day, it's cool that you can do it, and it's cool that people can grab something from it, whether and interact with it. Or I've seen other people riff on it and say, oh, here's a GIF of something or an image of my pick base doing the same thing. So it's really cool.
Exactly.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's supposed to help with the creative, aspect for the community at large.
Like you said, you're just entertaining people at this point.
Yeah. I mean, granted, would it be nice to win championships and other stuff? Yes. But in a weird sort of Roddy Piper type principle, sometimes you can have a character that's so over they don't necessarily need the title.
Yep. The Undertaker.
Undertaker's another one. But the thing is, he did win the championship at least twice.
Yeah.
He did win it. Whereas with Piper, he didn't win the NWA championship. He didn't, the heavyweight championship.
Yeah.
He didn't win the WWE championship, and he didn't win the WCW championship. Even if there was a time or two, he probably should have won it.
Yeah, he was always bigger than the title by himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, just to preface this, because there was one time in Mile High Wrestling when I referred to a championship as the throwaway title. It was mainly because of the fact that my character was trying to say that the main championship was more important, but also to sort of get heat on a particular rival with that. Every championship is unique, every championship is important, but there are times when you do realize as a character, sometimes you might not be able to reach that, all the time, and so you have to try to find other avenues to make your character stand out and be kind of entertaining.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. You definitely have to stand out at this point because there's a lot of, even in professional wrestling, when you watch it on TV, there's a lot of sameness between characters. So it's tough to stand out, and I think your character does, not only with the calendar of days, not only with the across 15 feds, but with the accent that you do.
And that idea for the accent came from when I was at university. I took an intro to language class, and they talked about, how certain societies, they develop pidgins, and then, which is the basically the starting building block of language, and then it goes from there to like Creole, and then from there it builds on to an actual language. And so I figured if there was an isolated group, that obviously they would talk in a certain way that would sound very different. Plus, my character is supposed to be a naturalized citizen from this other island nation. So she's clearly not going to speak perfect American English, but it's enough to where if you especially read a lot of the different tweets and everything, I write it the same sort of way to help build reading comprehension the way through. So eventually you're like, oh, well, I clearly know it's supposed to be this, but because the character talks this way, it's supposed to go the other way.
So what accents are you stealing from to get that?
It's probably a few different ones. I know that there's a bit of African American vernacular English or Ebonics, which again, you know, based on how I sound, it might not make a lot of sense to say that, but it's part of it with the, instead of the TH, it's a D. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she can't for her life say the ing suffix, so she's always dropping the G on like every single word that has it. Not quite sure exactly what that would be specifically.
But you kind of
you
did a mismatch of things and tried to throw your own twist on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, again, back with the originality. Well, what about Wrestle Revo 1 on Twitter at Revolution 1 Wrestling? I assume you recently joined up there. What do you think about the Fed, and what are you digging?
Well, again, I've only had one match there. It was a battle royal, like 6 people. It's a role play one. So me and one other person like role played, and the other person just went. His character name is Ross Hansen. Just went completely like this really, really good sort of promo of like, you know, like the really good like babyface type of promo. Mm-hmm. And my character was just kind of like, well, you know, I'm just getting the foot in the door. You know, I'm probably going to be jet lagged because I'm flying all over the country to get here. But I'm still at least going to do a good performance regardless. And, so yeah. And again, keeping the story straight as best I can. It's especially difficult when I'm in like 3 or 4 different groups and they all decide that they're going to have their show on the exact same day.
And so that's hard to pull off.
And so that's the reason why I came up with Kayfabe Airlines recently.
Nice.
As sort of like an in-joke of like, well, clearly no sane airline would have somebody go from like Reno to Los Angeles to Detroit to, I can't remember where the 4th place was, all within like a few hours of each other. But, you know, some alternate dimension airline, since we're dealing with that's why I usually have that.
Nice little chip
sort of
in
the
your back
fallback.
Yeah.
It's as logical of an explanation as I can come up with. The other option would be, and I have done this a few times, either where I've said it in the promo or I tweeted about it because I was like, okay, there's no way I'm able to get this to probably work right. As explaining that my character believes she has alternate dimension doppelgangers, or ADD, versions of herself. And so that's why I don't really use the pick base of my character unless it's somebody from a grappling group actually has the picture of it. It's also the reason why the Twitter profile picture is more of a cartoon look from a really talented artist who's handled by Tritzy Decker. Just because of the fact that in my own mind, especially when you read the different promos, you have a certain idea of what the character looks like, and for the most part, it's like red hair, glasses. Because she's the adorable angel, she has that sort of neck collar / halo. Some sort of dress as like a grappling gear, and like ballet flats, just with the dancing part of the gimmick. But yeah, each person's have a different sort of vision in their head. So
Yeah, and it's
and that's why also I'll do different gifts where it's a different like red-haired person, and that sort of goes off of that sort of alternate dimension doppelganger sort of theory.
It's almost like however you picture the character.
Yeah.
So what about what's happening now with you? You obviously are in all these feds. How's the character evolving, and what do you think is next for Azarine Bevins?
I'm not always sure what's next. Just because it's mainly just trying to, eventually what I want to try to maybe whittle it all down to just the one, and eventually try to figure out a way to get the main championship somewhere.
Yeah.
At one point that probably will be the case. I'm not entirely sure where. Ironically enough, with MHW's return, Bevins was considered the strong favorite, which blew me away just because I didn't really think that was probably possible. But again, it could also be for the fact that she was really one of the few people who actually beat the champion of MHW, Scrabs Stanzas, in a match. I believe if you're looking in the archive through We Are Splat, it's Mile High Wrestling Throwdown episode, I believe 22.
And he was the champion for quite some time.
Oh, he was pretty much the champion for most of the run.
Yeah.
Not to say that there weren't people like me who respect him as the person and as the character, but you just at one point you're like, but there needs to at least be somebody else, like anybody else, so that way it doesn't feel like it's just like stagnation.
Yeah.
Is the best way to put it. But again, he's a really good handler. He only does Mile High Wrestling. I saw him in a few other places where oddly, in like a one-off sort of match, and I can't remember the name of the Efed. Azarine did beat him, but it was because he didn't promote at all. He was just advertised on the show.
Oh, and then didn't promo. I gotcha.
Yeah, and so that's why she won, but then she was able to use that in the other.
Sure, in the other promo.
Thing. Yeah.
Well, good deal.
So.
Well, is there anything else we need to cover before we get to the questions from the crowd?
Trying to think if there is anything else. I feel like probably the questions will probably help for the other part as well.
We'll bring up some more. Okay. Well, very good. We're going to start on Twitter. And up first on Twitter, we got @HopeLissy. You're one of my favorite absolute handlers in the game. So positive, authentic, productive, and supportive. How do you navigate the perpetual negativity of Efed Twitter without finding yourself in drama?
There was at least a few times where there probably was drama, but again, it's just, trying to weave your way through it as best you can. Try not to step on too many toes. If there are people that clearly don't like you as a person out of character, steer very much clear of them. Still respect them, because they do phenomenal work. Even if there might have been one person who you weren't entirely sure about, but again, just, respect and just stay steer clear of them. Let them do their thing, let you do your thing, and eventually it'll all mellow out. Plus, it's a matter of time. As I said, I've done this character for almost 6 years. So, it's just trying to find the right rhythm, the right cadence, and the right voice to, and then just obviously try to have that sort of full glass optimism as best as you can. So that way, you're more positive and not feeling very down. And
Absolutely, and that's a good point. This Twitter game can bring you down quickly, so having a positive mental attitude going into it helps a lot.
Yeah.
Also from Hope Lissy, how do you balance so many feds?
Well, I balance a lot of them because a bunch of them actually are angle feds, and I make sure that, at least with the characters, like, okay, what is the sort of story they're trying to go with? Try to submit whatever I can of a sort of segment into the different grappling groups as I can. And then for the ones that are the roleplay ones, try my darndest to at least get something in by the deadline.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So,
especially when you're not quite sure like how certain matches are going to go.
Some very kind
especially
words from the handler
this week
as well.
Yeah. Just because the three-way dances are always difficult to sort of navigate, especially when you have like one person that's already promoted and like one person you're not quite sure if they're going to. And
you don't know how hard to go on each.
Yeah. And then, like for the character too, like for action wrestling, with the reason too, why the character's going to be promoting the National Bikini Day is because of the fact that there are other celebrations like Graham Cracker Day and others, but that one seems to be the one with the highest or with the most historical significance, especially this year, because I guess it's the 75th anniversary of when the person who unveiled it originally at I think it's like the Piscine Molitor in Paris, France, originally unveiled the particular swimsuit was back in 1946. So there is a historical perspective behind it. It's not just for sort of, tease or titillation. There is actually like a historical reference point behind why she decided to do it.
Makes sense. And where have you interacted with Lissy Hope?
It has really just been in action wrestling. She is a really good handler in terms of both the fact that she is able to go, whether it is in the more condensed Cruiser Clash roster or the main roster, where it can be as much like 4,000 words. She's just able to really connect well with lots of people. Even if her character might be a heel, she still has that sort of babyface type of spark to her character.
Very good, very high praise. Let's see what else we got. From at WrestleRevo1 on Twitter, what is your inspiration for Azarine?
So, I think one day I was thinking of trying to think of a different character. And for some reason, the phrase audiovisual, like AV Club audio, came into mind. And I was thinking AV, and then I was looking up the first name, and the more unique one was Azarine, which means blue. It's blue something. I can't remember exactly what, but that's again the reason why the character is how she is, because of that part of the name. Vebens just sort of was like a lightning bolt mentally, just popped in there and just kind of going from there. But again, yeah, it comes from audiovisual. Also, it's just the fact of, with the character I had before, which was the original Vanilla Shilla, Slamsley McBody. He was very much sort of a lot like how I would be if I was a pro wrestler, but with the sort of difference of being a second generation wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, oh, and it was also the fact that there were certain things about the character where he didn't want to wrestle. He didn't want to wrestle women. Because he was very much in that sort of 1980s, baby face. I'm supposed to be a certain way type of character. And so if Azarine, I was like, okay, I'm just totally going with a lot of different things that are going to be different. As opposed to that character. And, even certain aspects too, it's more just that I wanted to make sure to do a good representation of the character, a positive representation of the character, but obviously there's going to be, different, kinks and quirks that develop over time.
Sure.
With the character.
Well, good. And the next question from Russell Revo is, where did you get the idea for the gimmick? I guess it's kind of, like you said, it evolved from the family deal, but what about the exact gimmick?
Oh, it was just sort of piecing together different things. I know with the holiday thing, it was one of the things where I would go work, and something I still kind of do today, where I'll be saying to people, well, today's this, and it's just to get morale and
it's
everything up.
It's a conversation starter, yeah.
And it's a conversation starter, kind of almost like, for example, Mike, if you had the power, going kind of a pro wrestling question, if you had the power to have any theme song play whenever you walked into any room, which song would you have?
D'Lo Brown's for sure.
D'Lo Brown's?
It's my favorite wrestler, so that's easy for me.
Oh, yeah. For me, I usually jokingly say that it's Pretty Fly for a White Guy by the
Offspring.
Offspring.
There you go.
That'd be sort of the out of character one. In character could be a whole discography.
Yeah.
There's so many different ones for. And the sort of housewife part was because when she was first starting out, she dated Efed Young. They kind of married, and it kind of worked. And I felt too that, it would work better with that sort of dynamic, because I felt that if it was with a stereotypical, straight male character, then it would possibly,
run into sexist
not
territory.
probably work as well.
Yeah.
The dynamic would be slightly off.
There'd be a lot of questions.
But if, she's this way because she clearly is with a lot of very dominant-minded women, clearly that would be the reason why she's there. Also has a bit of OCD, so that's the reason why there's the cleaning and cooking and everything else. the dance craze thing is just because of it was something sort of, wordplay and playing with language. It was a lot easier to, say ballet rumba instead of battle royal, or
almost more fun.
Yeah, it's more fun. It gets people to kind of be like, and obviously there's been times too where people are like, well, we're wrestling, we're fighting. This isn't a dance. And at some point, it gets difficult to promote against certain people like that at times, because it's like, well, I know what your gimmick is, and it's the very much like, I'm the serious, I'm going to win, you're going to lose. It doesn't matter what you say because I'm super serious, and you're just a blip on the radar, essentially.
Yep.
But I still, out of respect, still try to at least come up with something original each time, as best I can, because, obviously, especially with 6 years, you're eventually going to come across a couple of times where you might have the exact same promo pop up similarly, because if you're with certain people and everything else.
Sure.
Yeah.
So can we make your interview day International Azzy Day?
I would say potentially, though I did go with May 4th for her birthday for two reasons. One, it's Star Wars Day. But the other reason, lesser known, is that it's National Orange Juice Day.
Oh.
And again, I figured with the whole Florida's natural orange juice thing that it would, again, tie everything together. But, if people want to celebrate it as International Azzy Day, I'm not going to stop them. It's just what it is. I also made sure to mention about it being World Sports Journalist Day.
Yes.
Because I feel, to a certain degree, however you want to rate it, but the fact that you have done 76 of these interviews, I do feel in a weird way you kind of have been a bit of a sports journalist.
Well, thank you. An esports journalist.
Yeah, an esports journalist.
I like it.
And then, this is my first time ever doing a podcast outside of maybe one experiment that I tried to do for a class when I was at university, like about, at least 10 years ago. Just because I wasn't quite sure of how my actual voice sounded. And so it felt easier just to, slip into a different character and go from there. But that, I mentioned that specifically because of it being also freedom from, I think it's freedom from speaking, freedom from fear of speaking day, specifically public speaking. And so I figured, doing this with you, it kind of helps with that.
There you go. It helps you tie it together. And I'll tell you, when I first started the podcast, I hated the sound of my own voice too. But as you listen to it and edit it and do it over and over again, you kind of get used to it. So here we are today, and I don't hate my voice anymore. So there you go.
That's very good.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for Twitter side. Let's move over to the Discord and see what we got. Thanks, Wrestle Revo and Lissy Hope. I ran into Lissy Hope one time and lost, so I don't know how much I want to promote that.
Yeah. Right. I feel as long as, they put forth the effort, that's what's most important.
That is the most important. You're exactly right. On the Discord side of things, it's Meg, damn it, up first. Azzy, where do you get your goofy days from? We kind of covered that.
I did explain this earlier. It's a national day calendar. and also check a day. Check the letter I, day, and if you type in whatever day it is and what either National Day or that particular phrase, it'll pop up with the one for whatever it is for the day.
There you have it. Or you can just check Azzy Veban's Twitter.
There is that too.
Who did you
I mean, I live on the West Coast, so especially with the job I do with the early hours, I try my best to make sure to try to get it as soon as I can.
There you go.
A lot of the days.
Who did you want to face off against in Revo when you signed up?
I admittedly, just because of how real life has been the past few days, I haven't actually looked extensively at the roster. But I do have to admit there's probably at least a few people that are probably on the ever-changing quote-unquote dream dance list, which is essentially just people that my character hasn't faced one-on-one yet.
There you go. The dream dance, I like that because it fits into your character. Yeah. Nice touch. Thanks, Meg, for the questions. Up next is Ron Hall McDonhall. It's at Highlander 4H. Mm-hmm. What is your greatest accomplishment in the hobby?
Oh, I feel probably that I know there's definitely been a few. I feel being able to be as positive with different people as I can. Also, the fact when the character did win the MHW Throwdown Championship, that was pretty good. Beating Scrabs in Mile High Wrestling was good. There's even one match that wasn't in MHW, but was in Vanguard Pro, which is a defunct organization, but was run by Finnegan Wakefield of OWA, where Azarine fought Stacy DeVille in one of their first matches and won there too. I would probably say those would be the definite highlights so far. And then whenever, winning different. So there probably isn't just like one highlight. There's been a bunch.
And who's been your favorite opponent throughout your entire e-wrestling career?
So it's going to be a bit mixed because as an actual person, they're incredible and they are a very great person. But promoting against them, there was definite times creatively where I felt like I was bashing my head against the wall because it seemed like the promos were very similar. But that was my reading of it. Again, somebody else might have a different reading when they read her promos. But it would definitely have to be Samantha Titanus Hamilton. She's definitely, I would say, the one that she's had the longest rivalry with. And definitely. And there's, there could be someone down the line, potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, she's had a good rivalry, and I say it because of the fact that she was a tag team with Talia Ariano, then Ariano turned on her, and then they had matches by themselves. She's also been tag team champion with Trixie Decker, and until the company that they were with, which was Women's Wrestling Revolution, went defunct. Not because there wasn't a creative and not because there's not a really good strong core of very talented handlers. It's just for whatever reason, it wasn't able to continue as a company. And so Azarine and Trixie were their last tag team champions before they shut down.
Well, that's still a nice little accomplishment.
Yeah. So.
Okay, and so someone you wanted to work with, but you never got a chance to.
Again, because we're dealing with e-wrestling, e-feds, and everything else. As I've been doing this, I have slowly been giving up sort of using the word never. And I would probably say ever. And it would probably be just because of the fact that I feel as a character, being a mother and very devoted wife, and the reason why she's number one on the Dream Dance list would be Kira Johnson. And there's a potential some way down the road eventually that they might face off against each other in Sin City Wrestling. I'm just not sure when. But that's definitely number one, because I feel whether it's win or lose, because you got two characters who are very devoted to their particular spouses and are very supportive when they are in relationships. She's been with the handler Roxy Johnson for a very extended amount of time. And so, again, it's just trying that's what I'd probably say is the number one, is to have that match eventually happen sometime in the future.
Number one on the dance list.
Yep. It's a very extensive list. It's not an exclusive list.
That's okay.
But Kira Johnson is definitely number one on the list.
It's a good place to be.
And we almost had that match. Well, we almost had a tag team match in Women's Wrestling Revolution. But the company shut down just before they would have had the match. So it was that close.
It's a shame, but maybe someday you'll still get it. You still got plenty of time, I'm sure. So,
oh, yeah. I'm just saying that's why that's the number one.
Very good. Finally, from Ron, best advice you would give someone new to the hobby?
I'd probably say, just find a good support system, whether, it's family, friends and goofballs you might meet through the hobby. Try to find your own voice eventually. And just know that, unless you feel like super transcendent about certain promos, that you may not always win. You can always learn something from a loss, even when there are many times you're like, well, clearly, I put all this effort into it, and maybe it's just that I'm throwing too many ideas against the wall, and that could be the reason why. And that it could be for any number of factors. But just to have fun with it, and just have be something that you can kind of kick around when you're whenever the ideas or creative juices start flowing. In between, hopefully, your other different hobbies. Like for me, going to trivia contests or playing Rocket League very extensively.
Yeah, you're right. Important thing is to be able to have something else that you can get up, walk away, and do when maybe this game frustrates you or maybe a loss frustrates you. It's nice to have another outlet. So, well, very good. That's what we've got from the crowd. I really appreciate your time and being on the show today. Is there anything else you want to plug, promote, put over before we let you go?
Let's see here. So, just trying to just do as many people as I can. I'd probably also say any of the people who are the shield maidens, whether it's Bruiser, Zombie, Bullet, Bandit, who might be the same person. But Laura mentioned Tritsy, the Heart of Infinity, Alyssa Daniels, who is another talented role player. Betsy Granger's also pretty good. Rob McLeod, the Highlander guy, is also really good. And yeah, there's so many different people I could name. I'd probably say the list of the positive people far, far outweigh the very few people who just hated the character / possibly me for whatever reason.
And like you said, yeah, the positive outweighs the negative, and that's why we play the game. You make friends, you have fun. It's creative writing together in a wrestling atmosphere. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, good. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on. What a fun interview with Slamzy, a person I was introduced first to, I believe, in Mile High Wrestling on their first run. Now Mile High Wrestling is back. I'm excited to see what they're going to do, and you can check them out. Of course, just give a Google to Mile High Wrestling. You'll find them out there. And, of course, they are on efeder.net, too, so if you want to find them there as well. Shout out to those guys. Thanks to Slamzy for coming on the show and talking to us. I had a great time. And, of course, I hope you had a great time listening. You want to thank our sponsors, each and every one of them. I want to thank our patrons for supporting us and giving in and helping us. You know, obviously, your contributions help us bring you the extra stuff like the interview with Jason that's going up on Patreon this week, I promise.
Justin.
And Jason Reeves, Justin, Stalker, whatever you want to call him. We've got it.
Creepy, that guy.
Reaper, Creeper, everywhere in between. And the interview even has a little run-in action. You can check it out at patreon.com/EFED podcast.
/EFED podcast.
Otherwise, guys, this is episode 76 of the EFED podcast. So excited you could join us. Thanks for listening. Click that subscribe button, hit that review button, give us 5 stars. We greatly appreciate it. You're helping out the show, you're helping out us, and we're going to enjoy bringing it to you even more.
And if you're on YouTube, click that subscribe button, click that bell button, click that thumbs up button, click all the buttons except the bad one.
Yeah, don't hit the bad one. Hit the comment button and leave us a comment. We've been getting some comments on YouTube like, this show is awesome. Why aren't people listening to it here? Where's the views at? People that are enjoying the show and want you to as well. Get in the conversation.
And that's just what me and Mikey been posting. Imagine what everybody else is saying.
Over at youtube.com/c/the EFED podcast.
EFED podcast. Just give it a search. You'll be in the money.
Brian hates that link. Okay.
It doesn't give me any room for my gimmick, for my .com.
Guys, for Brian, I'm Mikey. This is the EFED podcast, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.
listening to the Efed podcast, only on the Atomic Jobcast Network, presented commercial free on Patreon.